Pues bienvenidos a un episodio más de Reinventándonos podcast, un podcast donde invitamos a personas que se están reinventando, que están enfrentando un cambio organizacional o bien nos están dando herramientas para reinventarnos hoy para el futuro. El día de hoy tenemos como invitado a Brian Robertson, que él es creador, digamos, de HolacracyOne. So welcome to the show, Brian.
Thank you.
Thanks to be here. And well, we start with the check-in round. And right now we want to ask what makes you feel proud about these pandemics? How do you being something like, okay, this makes me feels good or something well done?
Yeah. Oh man, what a world we live in now, right?
Yeah.
I have to say, as sad as there's so many sad stories from what's going on right now, but I feel more than anything kind of a sense of hope and excitement at the same time. It's mixed with sadness, especially when people I care about have pretty tragic stories, but I see such a time right now of opportunity for change and for disrupting old patterns and forming new ones. And that's happened in my own company. And I'm really proud of how we responded to it, right? We've overnight, we went from in-person trainings being, 2/3 of our revenue or half of our revenue or something to they stopped completely, gone overnight. And yet we've adapted to that. We now have online trainings. We have all these new offerings, and our business is actually stronger than I think it's been in years. And ironically, it took a crisis for us to get there, but what an opportunity, right? It's and I'm seeing that in so many ways, and just generally in life. I've also adapted my own life. I've gone from traveling, 75% of my time was traveling, to now I'm dropping in to living at home. My house has become a home in a way it hadn't ever since I moved to Austin, Texas a couple of years ago. Now it's like I have a chance, and I'm proud of how I've responded and adapted my life and kind of dropped into this new world and used it as an opportunity. So yeah, I think that's the thing that comes to mind most for me.
Wow. Well, me kind of that I feel more in peace than ever. That's something like I'm proud. I don't know. Probably I have another crisis before, and now it's okay. It's more of that show and kind of be in control of my zone, or try to be focus, and that helps me because I say, okay, I will try to help whenever I can, but there's many things that I can't control. So I will try not to suffer, even though it hurts me that people are suffering, or some friends that have lost some relatives or family. That's hard, and it hurts, but many things I can't control. So I have to be in peace, at least to try to do what I can do. And that helped me also to change my routines, or be more present and value everything that we have so far. That helped me, and I think many people also are in the same, doing the same, or try to fight in, and that makes me at the same time peace. We are like evolving kind of or we are feeling more human than ever.
Yeah.
So that's help. No?
I really resonate with all of that.
Yeah. Started. Well, that's a lot of asking for Holacracy. I will try to be, concrete. And I also have here my book. It's translated in Spanish, but it's full of all underline and everything. And well, I'm also a huge fan, and thanks for accepting the invitation. And I would like, I know you mentioned in your book, also in your TEDx TED talk, and how Holacracy was created, or was something like was evolving, or was something like you have like some shock, or say, okay, here's a way, or how it emerged.
Yeah, well, let me start with a story. I start my book with this story as well. And it's just such a great framing, and it was so fundamental in my own journey. And it's a story of when I was flying an airplane about 20 years ago. So I was a student pilot at the time. I was learning to fly. I had about 20 hours of flight time in my overall experience at this point. And it was time for my first cross-country solo flight. So first time I'm flying hundreds of miles away from my home airport alone with no instructor in the plane with me. And they actually let you do this with only about 20 hours of experience. I was kind of shocked. I had 20 hours of flying time and they let me get in an airplane alone. But they thought I was ready. So I get up, and soon into my journey, the low voltage light comes on my instrument panel. And they don't teach you much about the airplane hardware at this point in the training, right? I don't actually know how the plane works fully. I don't know what that means. But my instinct is I better check my other instruments, right? There's a warning light on. So let me check every other instrument. And I did. I scanned that entire dashboard. I looked, my altimeter says I'm not losing altitude, so nothing wrong there. My airspeed indicator says I'm not losing speed. Everything's fine. My navigation is completely on course. Every other instrument tells me nothing's wrong. The only instrument reporting anything off is this low voltage light. So I figured this must not be that big of a problem, right? Only one instrument is reporting anything wrong and everything else looks good. I'm just going to let the other instruments outvote the low voltage light. I'm going to ignore it and I'm going to keep flying. Turns out that's a really bad decision. I nearly crashed the airplane that day. I ended up completely lost in a storm with no radios, no electronics, almost out of fuel and violating international airspace. So it was a bad situation, right? But I did make it down, barely. And as I'm reflecting on this experience, I realized this is what's happening in organizations. We humans become the sensors for our organization's reality. We are the instruments for our organization's flight. And often it's one lone person who senses something that no one else does, and then finds it ridiculously difficult to change the flight path, right? To move the organization. And ultimately, this is actually what led me to be an entrepreneur and start my own company. I got tired of being the low voltage light, right? I got tired of being the one who sensed things that I knew were an issue that could be better, and then finding I couldn't drive change in the companies I was with, right? And this experience, this flight happened at the very beginning, right after I started my own company. And I realized what I wanted to build was an organization where that didn't happen, where anything sensed by anyone, anywhere in the business could drive meaningful change if it was relevant to the purpose. And you can't ask everyone else if it's relevant to the purpose, of course. That doesn't work because, it's like asking the other instruments, is this voltage thing important? They're all going to say, no, I don't think voltage is that important. I don't know what that means, right? So somehow I wanted to build a system where one lone voice could drive change even when no one else saw the need for it, but in a way that still that didn't let somebody's ego take over, that still got everything aligned with the purpose, right? And that avoided what I call the tyranny of consensus, which is where everyone has a voice, but nothing gets decided because everyone has to agree on everything. And when you have that, it's actually worse than most management hierarchies as far as outvoting the low voltage light. No one can drive change if everyone has to see it and agree. It gets incredibly slow. So I didn't have an answer at this point, but this was some of what led me to the journey. And what I did was turn my software company at the time. That's my background in software. This is about 20 years ago. I was building this software firm and I decided to make it a laboratory. And so for the next many years, I just experimented. I wanted to find every process and technique and anything I could think of that would help us build the kind of environment where anything sensed by anyone, anywhere in the company could drive meaningful change rapidly and reliably, as long as it's relevant to the purpose, without egos taking over and without the tyranny of consensus. And I had no idea how to do that. A lot of trial and error, a lot of experimentation over many, many years led to what we now call Holacracy.
Wow. Yeah, and that sounds with me, and I love it. And when you say in your book, these antibodies of the organization, anticuerpos in Spanish, that are make which you consider are the strongest one? Because kind of imagine, that suddenly you say, okay, you are capable now to start change if you see something that is going wrong or there's some tension, and suddenly we can go in that direction if you see that is not that is aligned with the purpose. Which you think are the strongest antibodies, the mindset, the capabilities, the biases, or the egos?
Yeah, it's hugely difficult. I mean, ultimately, as a founder, as any entrepreneur knows, like that's you've got to build a company that goes beyond you controlling everything. You don't scale that way, right? And yet it's also really difficult, right? How do you build a system where people can drive change without you being the bottleneck? And this is where a lot of entrepreneurs, I think, run into trouble, and a lot of founders do. And sometimes you get your own ego wrapped up in it. It feels good to be the superhero that makes all the decisions that everyone needs, right? And that goes for a lot of managers and a lot of companies today. It feels really good to be that superhero firefighter that saves the day. And yet ultimately that's not our job as entrepreneurs, as builders, right? It's a metaphor I love is, as parents, right? When we're raising a child, for a while, you do want to be their hero. When your 2-year-old runs across the street, be the hero, grab them, pull them out of traffic, save the day. But if you're still doing that when they're 20, you've missed a step, right? Like something is off. So your goal as a parent is not to get stuck being the hero that saves the day, that does everything, that makes all the decisions. It's to build their capacity, right? To not need you. It's to teach them. So be the hero, but then teach them to look both ways, build their capacity to not need you to save the day. And I think that's what every entrepreneur and business leader needs to do as well. And in this metaphor, I don't mean the people on your team are the children. I mean the organization. Raise the company, not the other people. That's a mistake I see a lot of founders make, right? And that's not to say don't focus on helping people grow and develop. That's great, good, do it. But what we really need is to build the organization's capacity, its processes, its roles, its clarity, right? So that things run smoothly, naturally, and they don't need somebody as a bottleneck making all the decisions, so that everyone has their own area and they know what's theirs to lead, right? They know what their job is. They know the boundaries of their authority. They know their power, right? And when everyone has that, they know their part, they know their role, right? Then you've got a system that can outgrow that entrepreneur in a really deep way.
Yeah, and I just are saying this, I kind of think of these organizations in these pandemics, that probably we expect to have that leaders, like the Marvel little, no, this Spider-Man or someone like that. But at the end, I think we have like this opportunity to build for the organization, and no sé, I know in this case you see, well, one of the famous is Zappos that has Holacracy, and we are also a big fans of them. And I don't know what it was true, but I think it was, I don't know, an article like Inc. that when they start with Holacracy, like some managers went away, quick, because I don't know if they fell out of authority. I don't know, but then it helps, I don't know if there is like a preconditions to adopting like kind of Holacracy, or the directors or the leaders have to be in a mindset, and then okay, Holacracy, you can come, or every organization can do it.
I think it's actually exactly backwards. This is one of the common things that people think, that they first need to get the mindset change before they put in place the systems and behavior change that Holacracy will bring. But I think that actually misses the mark, right? There's basically two ways you can try to drive deep paradigm change. You can try to change people's mindset and hope behaviors follow, or you can help them change behaviors and hope mindset follows, right? And I think the mistaken goal a lot of change agents make is that they realize how deeply important the mindset shifts are to deep sustainable change. So they think that that's the path, change the mindsets and then get the behaviors to follow. But that's actually an incredibly difficult way to get sustainable change. You do need the mindset change, that's true, But a much more effective way to get there is help people change their behaviors. You get less resistance that way. When you go to someone and say, your mindset is wrong, they're going to fight. They're going to push back. It's hard. And or they're going to get it intellectually and then go do things the same way, right? Because they have habits, they have behaviors. But when you help somebody with a framework that changes their habits, that gives them new behaviors to do, they don't need to understand all of the principles and the why right away to start behaving differently. But then they start getting curious. They start experiencing a new paradigm in action. And that leads so much more easily, in my experience, to the mindset change, right? So I think one of the mistaken goals on this journey is people trying to do too much mindset change too early. And instead, what I suggest is get a framework. Holacracy is one. You can find other approaches. You can invent your own, although that'll take you 10 years. Find a framework, find a way of helping people change behaviors, new habits, new processes, right? Concrete, and then help them get the mindset, help them understand why we're doing things this way and see the results of that and start questioning why. What is that doing for us? That's what's going to get you your mindset change so much faster. So don't wait. Now, it's not to say there are no preconditions. You'll need people at least bought into trying the new behaviors. Right, but that usually isn't that hard. Often that just takes whoever's at the top of the old structure, the hierarchy, saying, "Hey guys, we're doing this," right? And that's usually enough to get people to at least try it and learn by doing.
Yeah, you say that people don't believe in change until they actually are changing. You know, and they actually are in doing the thing. You're doing the new thing. Yeah?
Yes, absolutely.
And you know, in this direction, because you also mention in your book, you say, okay, we can adopt like Holacracy, part of it, or we can adopt it in the whole system. You know, I see cases, or I have seen, for example, people adopting the integrative decision making and how to make decisions, and it helps. But I don't know if you can say, for example, I believe in Holacracy, and I have worked with Holacracy in some projects. But how do you say to, for example, the audience that, okay, is these advantages of taking as a whole, as an actually all Holacracy?
Yeah, this is actually one of the, I think, most legitimate, real criticisms that we've seen about Holacracy, which is it's so hard to adopt. It's such a big change because to really get it, you have to kind of change everything at once, right? It's a big change. And that takes a naturally long time to get there. But the hardest part is just that first move of saying we're changing the way power works in our company. Holacracy is a constitutional approach. There's a Holacracy constitution. It's an open source document. It's, you don't have to create your own, but it's still a change from power is held in a CEO to power is held in this constitution, which defines a governance process and all these other moving pieces. And then you got to kind of learn them all. And the interesting to note, that's been, I think, the most reasonable criticism of Holacracy. It's big. The magnitude of the change to get there is huge. And a lot of companies fail along the change journey because of that. But we've actually addressed this. We have the next version of Holacracy. We version control it, kind of like an open source software project or whatever. So version 5.0 is in beta now. It should be out in the next month or two.
Wow.
And, in version 5, we've actually broken it up in a way with a natural sequence of how you can adopt a piece at a time to avoid that huge change. So and I actually haven't talked about this much. This is one of the first podcasts I'm talking about this on. Which is really cool. It's coming soon in our soon to be released version. It should be out in February or March. And it's changing the game for how companies adopt because it addresses that. You still want to get to the whole change. You know, if you want to change your fundamental paradigm and system, you can't just tweak a little process, keep in place most of what you're used to and expect transformation. You do need to change everything, but there's now a much more incremental way to get there with Holacracy, which is, I'm really excited about that because that's been the biggest obstacle to companies effectively adopting this.
That's will be great to know this Holacracy file. And thanks for saying it and introduce it. And probably that goes in this direction that when we see, for example, people adopting agile, adopting design thinking, and you always have this impression that, okay, we say in Polymath that we always adopt methodologies to destroy them or to reconstruct them or to adapt to every situation. Yeah. It's not like linear. I don't know if there's some danger too with the Holacracy that could be, or the people adopt in a strict way that always, or in your experience how this process happens, how to make it personalized.
So Holacracy is operating at a different level from most of the other things that you mentioned and change initiatives most people are familiar with. So whether you're adopting design thinking or agile methods if you're in the software world or whatever, these things are operating, those are more specific processes for specific goals. Holacracy is not, it's a meta framework. So the beautiful thing about Holacracy to me is it's not some one size fits all, do it this way. But there's also not much risk of being rigid. In fact, we recommend adopt it completely rigidly, because ironically, what Holacracy is a rigid framework for being able to change anything and everything, right? So there's a paradox there, right? So Holacracy is not telling you what roles you should have, how to build your products or market or sell or manage your projects or anything like that. All it's doing is giving you a meta framework to adapt and change any other process in your company, any role in your company. So by its very nature, you have to customize it. There is nothing there. There's no content in it, right? Just a skeleton. You have to fill it out. You have to build your own muscles and nerves and all that in your organization. It's just giving you the framework, the skeleton. And it actually serves you well to adopt that part pretty rigidly, because it's a meta process. It's not a one size fits all like overall thing for how to run your company. It's just the framework. So in that case, you're better off just doing it. I mean, if you do it for a while and you realize you want to tweak it in some way, great. But start with Holacracy by the book, because that's going to let you customize everything and anything else very efficiently, very quickly. And then do that customization and find all of your own processes evolving and changing and shifting, right? That's where you want customization. The framework level, it's similar to like a computer operating system, right? I use a Mac. I don't want to customize Mac OS. I want to rigidly adopt Mac OS. And then within that, I want to customize everything on my computer. I want all my own apps, all my own settings. I have my own, preferences, everything. But I don't want to get into tweaking the operating system. I want that to just give me a off-the-shelf operating system that lets me customize everything within it. And that's what Holacracy is. It's an organizational operating system that you're going to need to customize everything else on top of.
Yeah, and for example, we're using in a movement where we are in with other colleagues that is called Reimagine to 2030 from Latin. Also Spain in Spanish, and we are using Holacracy. And when some have heard of it, but then they easily adapt, like it's very human. And one thing that I love it, and I agree that you see like this the organization as the living organism, as Frederick Laloux says, or you say also the corporate rebels, the ready, there's this mindset. And how do you think that this helps to Holacracy, that it's how do you say, a meta framework, but at the same time it's so natural and so like, okay, like when you see it, like, oh, we should like work like this way, it's like, it's not like that rational in the way. It's more, I don't know, how do you explain this?
Yeah, it's very
phenomenon?
organic. Yeah. It's an evolutionary system. So, what Holacracy does is help everyone in the organization sense what could be better, right? But very grounded, very practically, not just in your head. Most of that sensing, when it's really good, doesn't start with some intellectual idea. It starts with a felt experience, right? It starts where we say tension. You feel tension. You feel, maybe it's an emotion. You're frustrated or you're excited. Both of those are tension. There's an opportunity to improve something, right? You feel it in your body, right? That's where our sensing starts when it's grounded. It starts in our body and in our emotions. And then from there, we bring our head into the game and we say, well, what is this I'm sensing? Why? And what can I do about it? And So what Holacracy encourages you to do is notice those tensions you feel, right? From real situations, not theory, real grounded situations you encounter while you do your work. And then bring each of those tensions into a governance process that Holacracy adds to evolve the organization, its roles and its processes, right? And so if you get everyone doing that, what you get is a very living organic system where the structure of your organization is suddenly evolving, which most organizations today are not evolutionary. Even ones that are trying to do self-management and teal paradigms often miss the evolutionary component. They have something that gives people a lot of authority, a lot of self-management capacity, but what they don't have is a way to reliably harness the power of evolution within the company and its structure and its processes. And that's what Holacracy is really doing, which is what makes it, I think, so organic. And ironically, that's how Holacracy itself evolved, right? This wasn't just a theory of we think companies should be run this way. It was a lot of trial and error. And some of the things in Holacracy now, if you had told me about up front, I'd say that's a stupid idea. But in practice, it actually proved that it really worked, right? And then some of the ideas that I thought were brilliant that we tried turned out to be terrible ideas, right? So Holacracy itself has evolved from grounded practice of noticing what actually works and experimenting and adapting. So the framework itself is evolutionary. And then what it does in your organization is allow everything else to organically evolve from real tensions, from real situations.
Yeah, I love it that. I always say, like, I love the things that evolve. I know, like, as a human being, I always like, okay, you are say, okay, this don't finish here. It's still will go to another place. I don't know, probably now, but I'm sure that it will evolve even without me. You know?
Yeah.
So that helps a lot. Yeah. And how you think that Holacracy can also be used, like, in the public, or for example in cities, and in the way the governments can function around the world? I don't know if there's like some city that actually adopting Holacracy, or that that. Mm-hmm.
So there are several government agencies running with Holacracy now. And it really depends what you mean. I think we have to break it down a bit. So, any government has agencies that provide some service. And I think those naturally can easily adopt Holacracy like any other organization. They have a purpose, they have something to create or do in the world, something to provide, right? And they can organize how they provide their service or their product or whatever. They can organize the function of the organization using Holacracy. And there are several now doing that. Where it gets a little more interesting is when you talk about what happens at a legislature level. And there, I think it's the wrong question. When it comes to that, I mean, asking how we can get better top-down government legislature is, to me, equivalent to asking, how do we get better managers? It's presuming the management hierarchy is your only frame, your only option. And I think when we start looking at that, I think we have to start really questioning the fundamental assumptions and frame itself, right? Holacracy is not just about getting better managers. It's about changing the fundamental framework to distribute authority and involve everyone in the work of management. It's changing from single top-down management, a monopoly on management, to a more distributed management process in the system. And I think when we think about legislature, I think we need a similar shift. It's not just about getting better top-down legislator through Holacracy or whatever. It's, to me, the question is, how do we change that fundamental system, right? What alternatives do we have to distribute governance throughout the whole system instead of centralizing it in a top-down entity trying to govern everything, And I mean, there's a lot of ideas how we can go with that, but I think just making that split. Holacracy is a great tool when you have work to do and you need to organize around it, right? But the very paradigm of Holacracy is not what you want if you want to centralize authority in a monopoly top-down provider. It's itself involving everyone in the system in that governance as a living, breathing process throughout the entire entity.
Yeah, I hope that can be probably in cities, that they have, like, how do you say, the purpose, the people well established what their roles are there, and they are kind of mature of, okay, we can use Holacracy, we can, but depends. I'm with you in this. We have to change also the mindset of top down. The legislature is something big to change.
Yeah.
Well, now where we can find Holacracy, you say that we don't have also for this pandemic like the presence, but you are doing courses, you are doing. How can people learn Holacracy?
Yeah, so a great place to start is just the website, holacracy.org. One important note, people misspell it all the time. It's H-O-A, H-O-L-A, not O, H-O-L-A, Hola, right?
Yeah,
I guess
yeah,
that's
Holacracy. Yeah.
easy for your audience.
Yeah.
Holacracy, Holacracy.org. There's a lot on there. One of the things people will find, we do a lot of just free introductory webinar presentations, so somebody can at least get the hour-long download of what is this more concretely, right? How does it work? What does it look like in one of those? And if you want to go further, there's all different online workshop options now. Thanks to COVID, you can now learn Holacracy in the comfort of your own home. We do a training program that goes over about 3 weeks. It's a couple of sessions a week, about 3 hours a session. So it's split over a longer time, but it's really interactive. It's hands-on. You're facilitating meetings, learning how to like hold the process that Holacracy brings in as a facilitator and a coach. So yeah, lots of learning opportunities there. And of course, if you're in a company, you can call someone to come in and actually run this with your real organization and your real issues to give you a taste of it. And then if you like it, you can move on and do more with it. But we do a lot of short workshops, 1-2 day workshops for executive teams to give them a taste of what this would be like for their real issues. And we actually have a couple of Spanish speaking coaches because it's become pretty popular in your part of the world. So yeah, we are always happy to talk to somebody about doing something like that in-house for them. And then, of course, there's the book, and there's a lot of free resources online. So if you just want to stick your toe in the water and learn more, check out the book, start at the website, poke around, you'll find a lot.
Yeah, thanks. Well, I would like to finish, and I also like to finish what you think about your best case scenario of your future as a person and as a future of work. What illuminates you? What moves you?
Yeah. Oh man. It's funny. My answer to that, itself evolves if I look at it over time, right? Which I love. It's not static. At first, earlier with Holacracy, it was this, how do I create a framework where everyone can drive meaningful change? And I think we've got that really well defined now with Holacracy. It really achieves that, remarkably so. It's not perfect, but it's far and away better than anything else I've ever experienced. And now I find so much of my attention and interest is great. Now that we have that and we can be in an environment where everyone can own their power and their autonomy, right? Without treading on somebody else's, without limiting somebody else from owning their power and autonomy. Now we have this capacity for autonomy. Now, what motivates me the most is in those environments, now how do we bring in more interconnection? Which a lot of the companies doing Holacracy, it's a parallel path. They're creating a structure that gives so much more autonomy, while they're also creating a culture that gives more interconnection and more love, right? And I want to see this marriage, this union of power and love in businesses. How can we show up in an organization in our power, fully owning our power, our autonomy, but also in a way that is deeply interconnected and interdependent, and on a human level, open-hearted, vulnerable, loving with each other, right? It's the integration of these. And for me, I think Holacracy was a necessary piece of the equation. I don't think I can build the environment I want in a management hierarchy power structure because it gets in the way too much of the culture and the human interconnection and love. But with a structure that allows people to honor their autonomy, now there's something new possible on the other side, on the culture, on the interconnection. And that's really the area that I'm kind of most excited about exploring now. And I can genuinely say of many of the people I work with, I love them. And I don't know many companies and many environments where you can actually say that to colleagues just openly and genuinely. And I'm proud to be in a company like that.
Wow. Yeah. I love how you finish with that, because it was something that I would ask you, like this interconnection, that, when people feel that they can control or being in a in a in an organization. Actually, I remember one said in a responsive conference that I went in 2018. There was this guy from Or Design from Zappos. I don't remember the name, but he says that his wife tell him that I hope that someday our home will be like Zappos, like where people can feel that they can bring the whole self. And how you say you empower people. Now people can see, okay, this, because at the end of the game, love is interconnect, love is openness, and you have a big part of the equation. will be great, and I'm sure that you will get there and be more happy even that you are now.
Totally. Yes.
Well, I think it's a good place to end. It's a wonderful talk. Thank you so much
Yeah,
for
thank you so
accepting.
much for having me and helping to get the word out in your part of the world, and that this tool exists. I hope it's useful to your listeners as well. And yeah, thank you so much. This has been wonderful.
Thank you, Brian. So see you around. I will say goodbye in Spanish. So, Reinventándonos podcast es dirigido por Luis Salas y producido por Polymath, una red de consultores que acompañamos a las organizaciones en su cambio organizacional y las preparamos para el futuro. Pues bueno, ve a reinventar algo. So thank you, Brian. See you around. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Ciao.